One of the fastest ways of destroying a kingdom is to give preference of one particular tribe over another, or show favor to one group of people rather than another, and to draw near those who should be kept away and keep away those who should be drawn near. This was a quote from Sheikh Usman Danfodio, recently cited by Colonel Dangiwa in one of his open letters. On the program, we add to it that any nation that favors one group or race over another will continue to grow in darkness. Welcome. This is Democratic License. We open the program today. Recognition of the people and groups in Nigeria and around the world who are deprived, ostracized, discriminated against because of their race, color, religion, or even because of their background. My name is Tunde Alabi. Welcome to the program. Let us quickly take you through what the program will be today. First, we'll serve you with stories on how some countries around the world are responding to COVID-19. We'll bring the report of the memorial service of George Floyd in Minnesota this Thursday. We will also bring you a report on the European Union interventions in helping Nigeria deal with COVID-19. We'll also be joined by the ambassador and head of the delegation to Nigeria and ECOWAS, Ambassador Kettle Kalsel. We have a lot to serve you today. When we come back from the short break, we'll bring you our reports. Don't go away. Right, in the last few days, a couple of countries have made very cautious effort to return to normalcy amid COVID-19. Our diplomatic correspondent, Sadia Dosumo, has the stories and many more.
Aviation companies are to test safety measures proposed by the European Union Aviation Safety Agency to prevent the spread of COVID-19 as airports and airlines reopen following the pandemic. EasyJet, Wizz Air and Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport are among the airlines and airports to have signed up to the health and safety guidelines written by EASA and the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control. Air traffic resumed as Israel's principal airport on Friday after a strike by workers demanding compensation for wages lost due to the coronavirus crisis forced a brief shutdown. Israel's airport workers union said the strike was called out following a request by Israeli Transportation Minister Miri Ravi, who called the workout unacceptable and urged the union to negotiate a solution. Londoners are gradually returning to work as the coronavirus lockdown eases and finding the look of their city has changed, maybe for the foreseeable future. Many of the capital's busiest streets are now lined with sandbags and plastic barriers, reducing the road width to allow for social distancing on wider pavements. Beijing will then grade its public health emergency response level from level 2 to level 3 as it continues to report a low number of COVID-19 infections, the Beijing Municipal Health Commission said in a statement on Friday. Starting on Saturday, Beijing will lift entry restrictions for Hubei residents, the initial epicenter of COVID-19 pandemic, as long as they have tested negative. In the World's largest refugee camp, Rohingya leaders, aid workers, and officials say people with coronavirus symptoms are not being tested because of the fear of isolation and separation from families, despite the first death from the disease in the crowded settlement. A 71-year-old refugee became the first to die from the illness this week in the camps in the southern Bangladesh, home to more than 1 million from Myanmar. 99 cases have been found since mid-May, but only 339 tests have been carried out, leading experts to suspect a greater spread. And China has delivered medical supplies to Zimbabwe and Angola on Thursday to help the two countries fight against the coronavirus pandemic. Medical supplies offered by China's Ministry of National Defense to its Zimbabwean counterpart arrived in Harare on Thursday.
Right, hundreds have paid tribute to George Floyd during a memorial service in Minneapolis Thursday as the black community around the world tries to heal their pains. The memorial service was not only attended by family and friends of George Floyd, but people from all walks of life, including U.S. lawmakers. In this report, we bring you highlights.
At the first in a series of memorial services before George Floyd is laid to rest, Amazing Grace, hundreds of mourners gathered in Minneapolis to pay their respects Thursday.
The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?
While in Washington, Senate Democrats held an 8-minute, 46-second-long moment of silence, remembering each second Floyd was pinned underneath police officer Derek Chauvin's knee.
We gather here in solemn reverence to not just mark his tragic death, but to give honor to his life.
Elsewhere around the Capitol, the calls for justice continue to reverberate. Whether Democrat or Republican, U.S. lawmakers have been quick to condemn the death of African-American George Floyd after being detained by police. 4 officers have now been charged in his death.
It's a long overdue wake-up call to the country that there are too many of these cases where African-American men die in police custody under fairly brutal circumstances.
We have questions before us today that are of constitutional moment. Is our system of justice in America so infected by racism that it cannot function in a manner consistent with our democratic values?
The top Republican in the Senate has also denounced the violence that led to Floyd's death.
In no world whatsoever should arresting a man for an alleged minor infraction involve a police officer putting his knee on a man's neck for 9 minutes while he cries out, "I can't breathe," and then goes silent.
But while Republican leaders have been quick to express condolences and solidarity with the Floyd family, they have been less vocal in criticizing the actions of U.S. President Donald Trump, who this week called in the military to tamp down demonstrations outside the White House. In an opinion piece, one Republican Senator, Tom Cotton, expressed support for the president in calling for troops to be deployed on U.S. streets. He told Fox News a show of force is necessary in the wake of protests over Floyd's death, some of which have turned violent.
Let's see how these anarchists respond when the 101st Airborne is on the other side of the street.
Congressional Democrats have sharply criticized Trump's actions and are drafting a package of reforms aimed at changing the culture of policing in the U.S.
And this is just one thing we can do. We can also mandate body cameras. We can also mandate reporting. We can also make sure we change the laws that deal with how we treat these cases.
This as both Democrats and Republicans continue to face pressure to act to restore peace to the streets.
Right, welcome back from that report. Our focus today is on the European Union intervention in Nigeria to help Nigeria overcome COVID-19. And the EU delegation to the Federal Republic of Nigeria and ECOWAS is a full diplomatic mission representing the European Union in Nigeria. The EU discharges some mandates which are designed to implement the European Union common foreign and security policies, including development and trade policies, focusing on poverty alleviation and on the promotion of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law in Nigeria. Highlights of some of the intervention of the European Union in Nigeria as a country fight against COVID-19 is now being presented to you from our studio.
According to the EU head of delegation to Nigerian ECOWAS, Cartel Carlson, the gesture aims at mitigating the adverse economic effects of the crisis on the most vulnerable persons. He said the benefiting communities were carefully selected after a thorough needs assessment conducted by the EU, and 25% of the items will go to the people with disabilities, widows, as well as the vulnerable households.
So we know that it's not possible to feed every single Nigerian with assistance like this, but if we all contribute with whatever we can, big or small, then we think we can make a real big difference, and it's about that solidarity.
Cartel Carlson added that the focus on the immediate needs of the most vulnerable is because they pay the highest price when the economy is struggling.
So we are going to continue distributing today and tomorrow in different parts of FCT, and we are very concerned with doing this in an orderly manner, making sure that those that genuinely benefit are the most vulnerable families.
Today's gesture is the second coming from the EU as part of its contribution to support Nigeria in the fight against COVID-19. It is hoped that these items indeed gets to the target groups.
Joining us live in the studio is Ambassador Cartel Carlson. Ambassador Cartel arrived in Nigeria in August 2017. He represents the EU in multilateral cooperation in Nigeria and West Africa. He engages government officials among several other diplomatic responsibilities. Some of the mandates of the European Union in Nigeria include poverty alleviation, promotion of democracy, human rights, the rule of law, integration of developing country into the world economy. Right, I welcome to the studio today Ambassador Cartel Carlson. Ambassador Carlson, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be back here.
Great.
Thank you, Tunde.
All right. You arrived in Nigeria in 2017. Quickly, let me ask you, what is your assessment of the country looking at some of the mandates of the European Union in Nigeria, which has to do with poverty alleviation, promotion of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law?
So all of these agendas take time. But I think we have come to a point where fundamentally the relationship between Nigeria on one side and the European Union on the other side has never been better before. And we work together on so many different agendas, it's quite astonishing, frankly. Ranging from engaging in the Northeast, providing humanitarian assistance, development cooperation across the country. There's not a single state in this country where we are not supporting one way or the other. Or the political dialogue that we have every single day as well, whether around elections, whether related to conflict and stability, or as we see now, of course, with the current global crisis and the COVID-19 situation, and how we can come together as brothers and sisters, as sister continents, because we are neighbors by the end of the day, and working together around these joint agendas, pursuing the common interests that we have and the common values that we have as well. So I see some quite amazing results, but of course the partnership is here for the long haul, and we will continue working for many years to come.
I am absolutely interested in interrogating this mandate further. Especially, I would have loved to ask you, maybe 1 minute you quickly want to tell you, the mandate of monitoring human rights in Nigeria. Can I quickly ask you, what is your assessment?
Well, we had just very recently our human rights dialogue with Nigeria. We were co-hosted by Jeffrey Onyema, the foreign minister. We had participation from all the key interlocutors in Nigeria. Even the ambassador came back from Geneva to talk to us as well. And I think what was the main takeaway from that conversation is just how frank and honest and direct and open we are able to discuss all the different issues that are on the table. And I think that's the kind of partnership that we like to have. And this is not about the European Union being judgmental or telling other countries what to do. It's a common agenda. Human rights must not be taken for granted, neither in Europe nor in Africa. We have challenges as well. We are not, coming from a perfect point of departure. So I think it's about having that dialogue. It's about learning from each other. And the same can be said about democratic governance. Now, in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, maybe we are not talking that much about the need for electoral reforms, etc. But bear in mind that we have had election observers in Nigeria regularly since 1999. The European Union has provided more than 100 million euros in support for democratic reform, supporting INEC, political parties, the Senate, National Assembly more widely, and of course also civil society. And this is the kind of dialogue that we want to have, because we fundamentally believe that if you want stability, if you want development, if you want opportunities for all, then we need to base our governance on human rights and democracy. These are the founding values of the United Nations. Now it's 75 years since it was founded. Those are the founding values of the European Union as well, and they are the foundation as well in our collaboration with Nigeria.
Awesome. 100 million euros towards helping Nigeria develop its democracy and ensuring a proper safeguard of human rights. Ambassador Kelson, I'm looking straight to your eyes. Sir, tell me, on the scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate Nigeria?
Well, that's an impossible question, because these are such complex matters that they cannot possibly be boiled down to a single number. I think what is important here is the direction that any country or any group of countries like the European Union is taking. And at a whole, we see progress in some areas and we see challenges in other areas. When you have situations of conflictivity like we see in the northeast of Nigeria, unfortunately currently increasingly as well in the northwest, where we have seen violence again flaring up over the last weeks, or in the middle belt or in the Niger Delta, then the implications in terms of human rights are quite significant. We have seen over the last days these heinous stories, I must say, on women and girls of Nigeria losing their lives after being raped. The Barakats, the Uwas, the Jennifers, the Tinas, and I mean, I'm wholeheartedly with them and their families. When we see these situations of gender-based violence, then of course we know that there are significant challenges. Now, the role of the European Union is not to judge how Nigeria is doing. The role of the European Union is to accompany a partner, that is Nigeria, in offering our lessons learned, our best practices, our experiences, and to see whether together we can improve that situation. Today, this morning, I had a meeting with the Women Affairs Minister, with Ministers of Budget and Planning, with the senior leadership of the United Nations, to see what can we do through a creation we have done together called the Spotlight Initiative, putting the spotlight on one of the most difficult human rights challenges, namely gender-based violence. We are in a pandemic now, but this pandemic is the longest lasting pandemic in world history, because it's ongoing year after year after year, the violence against women and girls, and sometimes boys as well. So how do we treat that with the same sense of urgency and with the same resolve as we now treat the wider pandemic with COVID-19?
Absolutely.
I think that's our challenge, putting this on the agenda and saying never again do we want to see a girl being raped in a church and killed afterwards by men. There must be justice, but there must also be a framework, a normative framework, and a justice delivery system that is providing that. sexual assault referral centers like the one that we have helped building throughout the country, the National Register for Sexual Offenders that we helped creating last year, the shelters that we are now doing through the Spotlight Initiative, the domestication of national law at state level, and the implementation above all. These are examples that things can be done together if we make the multilateral system work, if we build on national ownership, and if we engage as true partners. And this is exactly what we're trying to do as the European Union.
Right. So you're not just putting money into the system, you're putting up framework to ensure that in the process of evaluating the outcome of the money, they are justified. Now, I want to ask you, if you go back to the European Union Parliament and they ask you, Ambassador Ketil Carlson, so much has been put into the Nigerian system. Justifiably, would you say such a huge amount of money has produced the expected outcome?
So listen, I'm being held accountable by the European Parliament, and they sent me questions and they had to grill me before I came here as an ambassador. And that's exactly how it's supposed to be. But I'm even more accountable to the European taxpayers, because these are family fathers and mothers, these are hardworking people, young people just getting acquainted with the job market, and they are taking a part of their salary out to provide assistance to other countries.
Absolutely.
That's a very noble gesture, and that's a very big responsibility for an ambassador to turn every euro and make sure that it's converted into something meaningful.
So how do
the
they
ground.
feel when they see young girls being raped, when they see innocent Nigerians killed in their homes, see families burned to death, and yet so much money is put into the security system from the common people in Europe?
Listen, I think they feel about the same as we all feel when we see the appalling killing of George Floyd in the United States, or when we see abuses taking place as well from time to time on European soil. So if we look at our engagement over many years of working with Nigeria, then we have had successes and we have had programs that have been less successful. And I think you need to recognize that, and you need to be willing to grab the bull by the horns. Because if you just believe that everything has been successful and everything has been smooth running, then you commit a very significant mistake, namely not to learn from the errors. So we are always monitoring very closely when we support programs in Nigeria and elsewhere, and we look into what worked particularly well and what can work better in the future. And we have examples of both, but I think with the years we have understood that the togetherness, working with Nigerian partners, building on their visions, building on their policies as well, making sure that there is sustainability, follow-up from each of the individual partners that we work with, building civil society and capacity and technical knowledge in the countries where we are working, then we leave that ability installed afterwards. And that is where we really get the bang for bucks.
Right. We can keep talking about this for the next 2 hours, but let me quickly ask you, 50 million euro to assist Nigeria fight COVID. How, in your evaluation, is this justified? Has it been well spent?
Listen, I think we are finding ourselves in a watershed moment globally and in Nigeria as well around the COVID-19 response or crisis situation. But I think we are in a watershed moment as well when it comes to the collaboration between the European Union and the wider Team Europe. So it's not only the European Union, it's all our member states. We have 27 member states. 19 of them are based here in Nigeria. And we have worked together with the United Nations and with the Presidential Task Force, and with the President himself, as a matter of fact, to create something that has never, in my knowledge, been done before in such a short time. Namely, to create an architecture, a funding mechanism where we can all come together, private contributors, international contributors, and support the same objectives, namely finding ways to support the crisis response in Nigeria. In a few days' time, we will land with 100,000 test kits in Nigeria. Currently, if I'm not mistaken, today we are at around 72,000 tests having been done since the crisis started. So you can imagine how we will leapfrog into a different category with that kind of support. We are providing lab equipment. We are providing protective equipment for health workers. We are providing awareness campaigns and a number of other initiatives. So I feel genuinely proud of being able to mobilize in such a short time such significant support for Nigeria at a point in time where, as you say, people are suffering in Europe.
Absolutely. Ambassador Kettle Carlson, I can have you here for the next 1 hour. It's great having you on Democratic Classes. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on the program today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
We're
much.
very, very privileged. And this is how far we can go on Democratic Classes today. You can go on AIT.live website, on our Facebook, and watch this over and over again. My name is Tunde Alabi. So we'll come your way again on Friday. Keep safe and enjoy yourself. Bye.